Every time I do a Gotham Knights video, I always get those few comments of people who still think that it's connected to the Arkham games. For example, when I made my video discussing 8 villains that have been teased in the Gotham Knights universe, I had a comment of someone saying, dude, Poison Ivy's dead, she's not going to be in the game. And I had to explain, no, it's not connected to Arkham. Yeah, she died in Arkham Knight, but this is not an Arkham Knight sequel, it's a brand new thing. Now, I'm not saying this to mock anybody, because I think it's perfectly understandable that some people would be confused that this is not an Arkham sequel, especially with the fact that this very much feels like a spiritual successor, narratively speaking, to the Arkham games. Arkham Knight literally ends with Batman allegedly blowing up, and Gotham Knights literally opens with Batman allegedly being blown up. And so it does sort of feel like a good stepping off point, especially if it was a continuation of the series. With that said, they've just simply stated that it's not a continuation of the Arkham games, that it's very much its own thing. And if you look at the gameplay and the art direction, it is very different. It does appear that they are going in a very different direction. And so I don't doubt that they're trying to keep some secret, that it is secretly connected or something. It's not. It's a completely different universe. But in today's video, I would like to ask the question, should it have been an Arkham Knight sequel? Should Gotham Knights have been an Arkham Knight sequel? I think it's an interesting question. It's something that a lot of fans are heavily opinionated about, because obviously the Arkham games are very beloved by Batman fans, and it is very tempting to just go ahead and say that yes, Gotham Knights should have been an Arkham sequel, and it does seem like it's a very convenient setup, as I mentioned, for an Arkham Knight sequel. It kind of picks up right where Arkham Knight left off narratively, and so it would make sense for it to just be a continuation of the Arkham games, and it could be argued that they could still retain that change in art style and character design and just call it a soft reboot. Say, yeah, it is a continuation of the Arkham storyline, but it's a soft reboot. We're going to change the look of the game and some of the gameplay elements that you will be experiencing. In fact, in many ways, it almost seems like a no-brainer, because then you would already have the success of the previous Arkham games to back you up. If this was an Arkham Knight sequel, then that would probably add a lot of intrigue to what this game could be. But I think that there's two major reasons, and I think that both of them are valid, and both of them will be good in the long run. Even if in the short term it's disappointing that Gotham Knights is not a direct follow-up to Arkham Knight, I think that in the long run these are both very valid reasons. And again, in the long run, I think that they'll both be very good for the studios, both Rocksteady and Warner Brothers Games Montreal, who are developing DC games. Of course, Warner Brothers Games Montreal is the team behind Gotham Knights, and Rocksteady Studios is continuing the Arkham universe with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. That one is a continuation of the Arkhamverse, which admittedly will probably be a little bit confusing to mainstream audiences. It will be a little bit confusing that there are two games universes starring these DC characters that are running simultaneously. At the same time, I think, once again, that the benefits outweigh the cons in this particular situation. So first of all, I'm just going to talk about the most obvious reason that Warner Brothers Games Montreal wanted to sort of divorce itself from the Arkham name, and obviously it's creative freedom. They wanted to do something completely different. They wanted to do a completely different art style. They wanted to do a completely different take on these characters. They didn't want to have to be bound by what Rocksteady had done narratively in the past. If they want to include Poison Ivy in the game, for example, they don't want to have to explain why she's back from the dead. They just want to be able to put her in the game. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And even assuming that that wasn't an issue and they were able to write their way around that, they would never be free of the comparisons surrounding the game. When you take a brand and continue a franchise for a game, not only do you take the recognition with you, you also take the legacy of those games. And so this game would then instantly be compared to Arkham Knight, Arkham Origins, Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, when they're trying to do something completely different. They're completely doing an overhaul with the gameplay and, again, the art style and the character designs. And then you'd have people pointing out plot holes, and that's just a lot of baggage that, yes, it might benefit the sales of the game up front, but in the long run, it might make the Arkham community a little bit more upset with your game. It might make fans of the original games a little bit less willing to embrace the changes that you're making, rather than just presenting it as a brand new experience that will not tarnish your remembrance of the previous installments. Now, the second reason is something that I actually think is interesting. This is something that I've been thinking about lately. I think it's very possible that Gotham Knights is not an Arkham Knight sequel because Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is. Think about it. Rocksteady is really the masterminds behind the Arkham games. Warner Brothers Games Montreal made one filler game with Batman Arkham Origins, but they are certainly not viewed as the owners of the Arkham universe or even the people who made the best games in the Arkham universe. Really, the Batman Arkham universe is Rocksteady's baby, and think about it this way. Imagine how difficult it would be to go forward making sequels from two different studios for the same universe. It was different with Arkham Origins because it was a prequel. And who knows, maybe the B team at Warner Brothers Games Montreal is doing Arkham Origins too. I can't tell you what they're doing. But it was different when it was a prequel because they could go back, they could kind of look at some things that were yet to be explored. They were in talks with Rocksteady, who said, don't use Scarecrow, don't use Robin, we're using those characters we don't want to make plot holes or anything. Use these characters, use Copperhead and Shiva that we're not going to use, and then we won't have an issue. With Gotham Knights, however, imagine if Warner Brothers Games Montreal said, okay, so we're going to have this game that stars Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and Red Hood, and it's a follow-up to Arkham Knight, and it's sort of a battle for the cowl scenario, and Bruce Wayne returns at the end. And then imagine Rocksteady is talking about their Suicide Squad game. They're saying, okay, so the Justice League has been mind-controlled by Brainiac. It's this end-of-the-world scenario. You're playing as the Suicide Squad, and at the end, Batman comes back. Now you have two completely contradictory scenarios that involve the same plot point in two completely different games. Now, could they compromise? Could Rocksteady say, okay, you can bring back Batman, we'll do something else? Sure, they could, but then that would weaken the story that they want to tell. They would have to dilute their story in order to service the other team that wants to use that same plot point. And it's not limited to just that. It's also, you know, as I mentioned, with some of the dead characters in the Arkhamverse, what if Warner Brothers Games Montreal wants to use them? They don't necessarily want to have to rewrite all of these characters back in or resurrect all of them. And to be completely honest with you, I don't know what Warner Brothers Games Montreal is planning in the future. They've mentioned that Gotham Knights is kind of supposed to set up their own DC gaming universe, and it will be interesting to see what they do going forward, whether that's Gotham Knights 2 or a Superman game or some other team based in Gotham or Metropolis or something like that. I will say that I do find it interesting that both the Gotham Knights and Arkham universe take place so late in Batman's career, like at the end of it. The only exception is Batman Arkham Origins, but other than that, we really haven't gotten a game in either one of these universes set early in Batman's career. And who knows, maybe there will be more prequels in either the Arkhamverse or the Gotham Knights universe. But I do just find it interesting, and I do find it interesting that the game that Warner Brothers Games Montreal has chosen to make is essentially another Batman game, but just using the Bat family as a stand-in rather than doing something completely 180, rather than going off and doing a Green Lantern game or something along those lines, or doing a more mainstream DC character. And the only reason that I can think that they would do that is for one of two things. One is that it's a passion project, or the other is that Rocksteady is insistent upon using some of these characters for their upcoming DC games, and therefore Warner Brothers Games Montreal have sort of had to think outside the box in regards to new IPs that they want to work on. For all we know, maybe the choice was literally make Arkham Origins 2, or you have to do a complete reboot, but you can't use Batman because Rocksteady's bringing him back and we don't want two game versions of Batman going at the same time. Or, you know, we don't want you to make a Superman game because Rocksteady's planning on doing a Superman game at some point. There's just so many potential moving pieces that we really don't know the full extent of, and I'm not saying that those are necessarily likely scenarios. I just think that what it comes down to is Warner Brothers Games Montreal wanted to do something entirely different, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're stepping away, they're using different characters. They still are interested in telling a Batman story because that's what they've been developing since 2013. They want to do another Batman game, but they didn't want to just make another Arkham game. They didn't just want to make another Arkham Knight. They wanted to do something completely original, and that's exactly what they're doing. And the reason that it's not even set in the Arkhamverse, I think, is mainly because they don't want their game to be compared to the Arkhamverse. Again, because they're doing something so incredibly different. And also, maybe there are some restrictions imposed by Rocksteady that they wanted to sidestep, and this will allow them to do that. But anyways, that is why I think that Gotham Knights is not connected to the Arkham universe. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.